Okay, we'll start the webinar now. Hello and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Helen Hall and I'm your host for today. This webinar is being recorded and will be on our website within a few days along with the slides for download. Our presenter today is Nigel Bristow. Nigel is the founder and president of Targeted Learning. Nigel's international experience, ongoing research interest, and broad organization development expertise make him a highly regarded consultant and speaker. For the past 25 years, he has been a consultant and trainer in the fields of career management, coaching, mentoring, and performance management. Nigel has delivered training in more than 17 different countries and almost every state in the U.S. Nigel is a dynamic speaker who successfully blends the discipline of solid research with the wisdom of experience. Nigel's clients include companies such as 3M, Boeing, ConocoPhillips, Fidelity Investments, Microsoft, Monsanto, Sherwin-Williams, and Textron. He has authored several articles in his field, as well as 3 books, including Where's the Gift? How to Achieve Phenomenal Success by Discovering the Gift of All Feedback. The Beyond Job Satisfaction Field Book, Tools and Templates for Maximizing Your Engagement and Vitality at Work. Building Communities of Learning, How to Harness the Collective Genius of the people in your organization. I proudly present Nigel Bristow.
Thank you, Helen, and welcome everyone. Good morning to those in California. Good afternoon to everyone from other places not on the West Coast. I'm delighted to have the next 55 minutes with you to talk about some career development issues and how to get what you want from your career. Let me tell you up front that I will speak most of the time and will not actually stop to ask questions or have you ask your questions. We won't leave a big block of time at the end. I would prefer it if you would use the chat box to forward me any questions as they occur to you. Some of those questions I will answer as and when they come up. Others I'll defer to later if I think it would be more appropriate to handle the question later on in the presentation. This list of things that are important to people is just to get us started. Not everyone wants the same things from our career, but I'm here to tell you that whatever you want, the basic way in which you achieve it is the same. We may have different needs, and you can get anything on this list, you just can't have it all. And so career management, one of the principles of career management is you've got to be willing to make trade-offs. Some people thought at one time you could have it all. That's just not realistic. People, for example, who want opportunities to move up may find that it's harder to get work-life balance. And so career management is about trade-offs. And I'm not here to teach you how to make those trade-offs, but I am going to teach you, once you've decided what's most important to you, the path that gets you that. I want to begin with a quote by Walter Williams. Texas cattlemen work long hours to make sure that New Yorkers have all the steak they can eat. The ranchers don't do this because they love New Yorkers. They do it because it's in their own self-interest to do so. So self-interest is the basic engine for any capitalistic society and economic growth. Now, self-interest is also what brought down much of the Soviet Union, because industry and so on didn't tap into self-interest. And that's why capitalism won out. It figured out how to tap into self-interest better than communism ever could. So let's talk about the implications of this. Organizations are driven by self-interest. Now, organizations will have good mission statements and will spell out noble causes that they support, but in the end, they want to make a profit and they want to have a sustainable organization. Now, just as organizations get the best out of us by tapping into our self-interest, making sure that work is engaging, that we have the right incentives, that we're working on something that's truly meaningful, that utilizes our talents, etc. We need to do the same in our careers if we want to achieve what we want. To get what we want, we have to give organizations what they want. And so my presentation is going to spend a lot of time on talking about companies and what they want, because that's what's going to get you what you want. Let me just remind you that you can ask your questions at any time as they occur to you. Just type them in and I will respond to them on the fly. So here's some principles for getting what you want. First, you manage your career like a business. A number of years ago, we were doing a consulting project for a large chain of restaurants. And in one of the restaurants we were studying, there was this one server who probably got double the revenues from his tables in the restaurant than anyone else. And his tips were more than double what anyone else in the restaurant got. And so it was something that the restaurant wanted to understand. And so we interviewed Vince to try to figure out what he did differently. And we couldn't find much. But here's something that Vince told us that we thought was a key to what differentiated himself and resulted in his outstanding productivity. He said most of the other employees in this restaurant see themselves as employees. They see the company as hiring them to do a job, and they're at the beck and call of the company. Vince said, I don't look at myself that way. I see myself as an independent. I rent space from this restaurant chain, and every customer that sits down at my tables, those are my customers. He brought a very different mindset to his job. And one of the things that we need to do as individuals in our careers is stop thinking of the company or the organization that pays our salary as an employer. Think of that company as your customer. Now, something dramatic changes when people start to see their employer as their customer. For example, a large organization like Microsoft or Boeing would not ever say, dang, these customers of ours, they just don't tell us what they need. They aren't clear about their expectations. Boeing, Microsoft, and other organizations, they make it their business to really understand the business of those companies they serve, their customers. And so all too often in organizations, we might complain our bosses aren't clear about their expectations, don't communicate clearly, etc. And my view is your boss is one of your customers, and it's your job to find out what drives that boss. What are his or her priorities? What does she get evaluated on at the end of the year? What does she lose sleep over at night? Once you've answered those questions, you're in a better place to meet the boss's needs and the company's needs, and thereby get the influence to meet your own needs. Number two, decide what's most important to you and what you're willing to trade for it. Number three, treat your employer like a customer. Identify how the organization defines and achieves success. Now, you get that from written statements that a company might publish. You get that from speeches that executives give. You get it from their day-to-day decisions, how they make decisions, what they get upset about, what frustrates them, what they lose their tempers over. et cetera, et cetera, you start to identify what's important to your customer. And the key is not just to meet or exceed the articulated expectations of your customer. What you've got to do is far exceed any customer expectations by identifying the organization's unarticulated needs. So let me share a little story with you that I'm sure you're all familiar with. And it's an old story, but it's probably still my favorite in terms of identifying an organization's unarticulated needs. Art Fry came up with the idea for Post-it notes at 3M some 30 years ago. When he took that idea to management said no, partly because they didn't see it fitting their strategy. 3M made stuff that really stuck. And now this person was wanting to sell something that didn't really stick very well. The marketing people also looked at the product, and they went around and did a few surveys and said, no, there's not a big enough market for this. Art Fry had identified a need in the organization that no one had asked for. In fact, when he suggested a product that they didn't see within the strike zone of the organization, he still saw it as a need that they just hadn't figured out yet. And he set about selling them on that particular need. And so what did he do? He created a batch of these Post-it notes, gave it to the secretaries of executives in the company. They started to realize how valuable these little sticky notes were. They started to use it. Guess who else started to use it? Obviously, their bosses. The bosses of these executive secretaries and the secretaries themselves got hooked. And when they ran out, who do you think they called? Art Fry. The rest of the story is history. That little product has added probably a couple of $1 billion to 3M's bottom line over the last 30 years. It was an unarticulated need. No one was asking for it. Art Fry saw it. He saw it as being a valuable product, meeting a need that the organization had that they hadn't yet figured out. In fact, one of the reasons Post-it notes did so well is there was no one in the marketplace articulating a need for Post-it notes. And so he was able to meet a need that they hadn't yet figured out how to ask for a product to meet that need. And it was a runaway success almost from the start. But it's interesting. The way they marketed that product internationally was they sent out free samples, knowing that just as the executives and the secretaries of those executives had become hooked on the product, so too external customers would get hooked on it. They didn't know they needed it until they had it in their hands. Okay, so I'm going to be sharing with you in this presentation a model that will help you define the organization's unarticulated needs. One of the reasons you can't exceed the organization's expectations by just meeting articulated needs is because if the organization's articulated it, everyone has access to those articulated needs. And there are at least going to be other people in the organization trying to meet those articulated needs other than you. But when you can identify needs that others haven't figured out, that have been unarticulated, you figure it out and start meeting those needs, you start to differentiate yourself. And then the fourth thing that we're going to discuss is avoiding the trap of the comfort zone. Okay, sorry, I went the wrong way. Some of you may be familiar with the stages model, and there are different stages models out there. This is my model that evolved from the four-stage model of Dalton and Thompson that some of you may have heard about. Let me run through it quickly and then talk about why it's relevant to this topic. What the stages model describes is 5 different ways that knowledge workers add value in an organization. And in the end, that's what you're hired to do, add value. Since you're all knowledge workers, this model is designed very much for you and the kind of work that you're involved in. So stage one is acquiring knowledge. You're learning from others and from your experiences in the organization. You're trying to master the rules of the game in that particular organization. You're mastering some technical skills and hopefully moving towards mastery. But in stage one, you still need a lot of direction from others. You haven't learned all the rules, the protocols, the boundaries, etc. But that's what stage one is about, figuring those out. And then finally, you're focused on personal growth. Stage two is you now know the rules of the organization. You've basically mastered the technology that allows you to complete important tasks independently. You don't need a lot of supervision. You don't need a lot of direction. You take initiative within the established norms and parameters of the organization that you've come to understand. You know which rules you can bend a little, which ones you can't break, and then which ones people talk about but are not taken seriously in the organization. And you take initiative within your understanding of those norms and parameters. Your focus in stage two is on your personal performance. In stage three, you're changing your mindset from working within the established norms and parameters to actually questioning some of those norms and parameters. You're questioning the status quo. You adapt existing knowledge to new uses. You may invent new methods or products or technologies. Now you'll notice there under stage three, I say you're not necessarily championing those new ideas that you've come up with or products or technologies. Now that doesn't mean someone couldn't both invent and champion, but the championing portion of that is stage five. The invention portion is stage three. Most engineers and technical professionals do not make the transition from stage two to stage three. And one of the reasons for that is they get very comfortable in stage two because they know what the rules are and they play within those rules and parameters. And that's a safe thing to do. Questioning the status quo is not a safe thing to do. It takes some skill, it takes some savvy, call it emotional intelligence, and it takes some courage. And the very thing that made you successful in stage two was understanding the parameters and the rules of the game and playing by them will prevent you from moving into stage three because you've got to now start challenging those. Stage four requires another mind shift, but a very different one. In stage two and three, the focus is more on yourself and making yourself look good through your personal performance. In stage four, you're really looking to build team performance and capacity. It's about maximizing the team's performance rather than your own performance. And you do that by building the ability and confidence of others, coaching, motivating, clarifying the direction, translating the strategy that comes from on high but is unintelligible, translating it into a way that those around you understand how to move or take action based on those higher level strategies. It involves giving feedback. I want to point out that you don't have to be a supervisor or manager to be stage four. In fact, in the research that we've done, there are many more individual contributors in stage four than there are managers in the organization. So stage four is sharing knowledge. That's the label, but I don't want you to get hung up too much on the sharing knowledge because stage four involves some other things as well. It involves integrating the work efforts of others and brokering resources. So let's say an engineer walks into some other engineer's office. If they're stage four, after they've had a few exchange of thoughts with the individual and they learn what this other person is working on, the stage four person reacts very different than the stage two person. The stage two person may say, oh, that's interesting, and off they go. The stage four person is always thinking about integration and the work team performance. And so the stage four person will say, you know, I was just speaking to so-and-so down the hall last week, and he's working on something similar. I think you really need to talk to that group because I think there's some things that they're doing that might benefit your work. Or brokering resources. They say, hey, you may want to speak to so-and-so, or you may want to go over to that group. They have some resources that you might be able to tap into to make your project more successful. They're always looking for those opportunities to make the team more productive. Okay, and then leveraging knowledge, stage 5, is where you institutionalize the knowledge that you've gained or that others have developed in the organization. So someone else could be creating the new knowledge in stage 3, and the stage 5s pick up on it, see its potential to be leveraged across the organization, and find ways to make it a best practice in their part of the company or maybe in the larger organization. They're looking to build the organization's capability, and that's what differentiates stage 5 from stage 4. Stage 4, people are usually trying to maximize the performance of their immediate work team, etc. In stage 5, they are willing to sub-optimize the performance of the team because it's in the interests of the organization's overall success to do so. To maximize the productivity of the whole, maybe you have to sub-optimize on some of the parts. People who cannot make that distinction and are always focused on maximizing their part never make it into stage 5. Stage 5 people champion new systems, new work products, work processes. And as I say, this could be the same person who developed the system or the work process, or it could be a person championing a system or work process that was developed by someone else. Obviously sharing credit along the way. Otherwise, they don't get fed these ideas in the future. Okay, you'll notice there it says they shape and make decisions that cross organizational boundaries. If you will excuse me, I'm just going to have a little sip here. My voice is getting a little dry. Okay, I've got a question here that says, why sub-optimizing individual contributions? Does leveraging knowledge automatically reduce a team's effectiveness? Certainly it doesn't automatically do so. But let me give you an example. And at first I'm going to differentiate between stage 2 and stage 4, and that's the sub-optimizing individual contributions. A stage person may see someone else on the team working on a critical part of the project struggling, and perhaps getting behind schedule with their piece of it. But the stage 2 person says, if I stop doing my work, my boss may put some heat on me tomorrow because I've let my stuff slide in order to help this other person on the team. Now, the more strategic stage 4 person might say, what I'm working on isn't part of the critical path, but the piece that Jane's working on is part of the critical path. And if Jane lets that slip, that's going to hurt the entire team. And so the stage 2 person will say, I'm not going to take the chance that my boss is going to put some heat on me. The stage 4 person will go and help Jane and then explain to the boss, either here's what I did because here's why I think it was in the team's interest for me to drop my tools and go and help Jane, or might speak to the boss in advance and say, hey, I think Jane needs some help. Here's why I think I should put my stuff on the back burner for a day and work with Jane. So that's what I mean by sub-optimizing some contributions. Now let's make the distinction between team performance and leveraging knowledge in stage 5. Sometimes resources, not sometimes, always resources are a constraint in an organization. And sometimes you get this infighting with people in different silos, saying, I want the resources for my team because, and they won't articulate this bluntly, but I need my resources so my team can look good. The person in stage 5 is willing to say, I think your team needs those resources more than my team does, and it's going to hurt me a little on my project because I've given up some resources so that another part of the organization can tap into it. But I think that's in the best interest of the larger organization. Or let's say we have a stage 2 manager, and by the way, you can be a stage 2 manager where you really don't manage. You're still an individual contributor, but you have a title of a manager. And this kind of person might say, I'm not going to let this person take a job elsewhere in the organization. I'm going to do everything I can to keep him on my team because he's a star performer and he makes me look good. The stage 4 or 5 manager says, no, it's time for that person to move on, and it's going to hurt my team in the short term. But this person is a resource that can make a real difference in this organization, and he needs new developmental opportunities, and that means leaving my group to go and work in another group. Anyway, I hope that answers the question. Now I have another question that says, this sounds like it could also be a resource management issue. I think you're absolutely right. That's part of it. But it's not just resources, it's ideas. Although you could put the label of resources on ideas as well. Okay, I've got the confirmation from, and I'm not sure how to say the first name, but Murphy says I've answered the question. Thank you. So let me share some of the research that we did. And, oh, I see, it's Phyllis. Thanks, Phyllis. Appreciate your question. When I first developed this model, I got 17 organizations to agree to participate in a study. And what we did was we got the managers in those organizations to force rank their people based on the perceived value of each individual's contribution to that organization. We gave it very simple instructions to those managers. We simply said, we want you to force rank your people based on the value of their contribution over the past 12 months. At this point, we hadn't revealed we hadn't revealed the stages, language, and the model, etc. We just said, you force rank them based on their perceived value of contribution, based on your perceptions over the past 12 months. After they got that ranked list created, we then gave them the stages, language, and descriptions and asked them to put each of those people in a stage. Now, obviously, it's not as clean as that. And so we asked multiple questions around stages, you know, the number of different stages they contribute in a meaningful way, you know, what stage best describes where these people are contributing, etc. Anyway, we took all of that data and we correlated it with the ranking data of perceived value, and this is what came out. So of those people who were seen as primarily contributing in stage 1, only 15% of them were on the top half of the rank list. And that's what we mean by percent viewed as above average. Only 15% of those in stage 1 were on the top half of the rank list. And so it goes up to those who are leveraging, 94% of them were on the top half of the rank list. As I said to you earlier, this is not describing management jobs in stage 4 and 5, although a lot of the stage 4s are individual contributors. We don't see too many individual contributors in stage 5. That is more manager or executive dominated, but in every organization we find individual contributors in stage 5. Okay, so those are the stages. You will notice the jump in perceived value between applying and creating, and then you see the march up from creating, sharing is even more valued, and leveraging gets the highest value. Now, why is that? I my undergraduate major was in economics. Later on, I went to graduate school and studied organizational behavior, and that led me into the field I'm in presently. But given some of my background in economics, I look at the data that came out of the integration of the managers' ranking data and then their assessment of what stages people were in, and I can make a convincing case for the logic of this. Stage one, clearly, some of those people are seen as above average because of the potential they show. But if primarily you're contributing in stage one, you're probably not adding as much value in that stage as you're being paid. Now, it doesn't mean that you're not doing some stage two work, etc., when you're in stage one, but if primarily you're in stage one and you're dependent on others, you're not doing a lot of individual work, and that's going to limit your contribution. Stage two, you're able to work independently. The founder of UPS, Jim Casey, he made an observation that the value of an employee is inversely proportional to the amount of supervision they require. He placed a premium on people who didn't have to be told what to do, but would act independently. Stage one people are dependent on others, particularly their supervisor, and there's a cost to that. In stage two, they're working independently, adds a lot more value. Stage three is where the innovation happens that keeps the company competitive. Without stage three contributions, an organization might survive for 2 or 3 years, but after that, they're going to be left behind by the competition. So that innovation is critical to sustainability. Stage four is even more highly valued than stage three, which might surprise one if you're in a highly technical organization where innovation is critical to the longevity or sustainability of the organization. But the economic argument for that is stage four, you have the benefit of the multiplier effect. If in stage 2 or 3, I come up with a new idea that makes me 10% more productive in my job, that's nice. But if I share it with others in stage 4, and that 10% productivity increase is experienced by 10 people on my team, my net added contribution to the organization is 100% increase. And then leveraging knowledge, we're taking that same idea, we're making it available to 50, 100, 1,000 people. And that multiplier effect can have an exponential influence on someone's impact. And so that's the logic that I apply to this model based on my background. There may be a lot of other reasons one could give. So I have my first poll question. What stage best describes your contribution to the company over the past 12 months? Now, this is where Helen helps me. There we go.
Participants, I'm going to open the first of several polls that I would like to for you to participate in, and the results will be shared with you at the end of each poll.
Okay, so if you could let us know what stage best describes your contributions to the company over the past 12 months. Okay, that looks like we've got it. So stage 1, very few, and that's understandable. Lots in stage 2 and 3, and I think there were a few less in stage 4. Okay, that's good to know. Now I'm going to ask a slightly different question. Which is the highest stage at which you have made meaningful contributions over the past 12 months? So this might not be the stage that best defines your contributions. The one that best defines your contributions might be stage 2, but you have made meaningful contributions in stage 4. So based on that, the question. Okay. I've had a great suggestion saying it might be helpful to put the stages up again, the one that has the 5 descriptions. So we'll go back to that slide. Okay, so Helen, I didn't see the results for poll number 2.
Okay.
Okay, so here we have a lot more in stage 4 and some in stage 5, 14.29%. Okay, great, thank you. Let's put up poll 3. I'm not going to turn to that slide. I'll leave my 5-stage descriptions up. Okay, so poll 3 is, who do you think managers said they would least want to lose in our research? So this is going back when we had the managers force rank their people and then put them in stages. We then interviewed the managers and asked them about who they'd least want to lose. Okay. So at this point, I'm going to say it was 3 4s and 5s. And depending on organizations, it did differ. So if you had a heavily R&D organization, stage 3 might have got more votes than stage 4. But stage 4, on average, was higher than stage 3 in terms of people or managers saying they'd least like to lose those people. Now, one of the things that is important to say is that if that manager was saying, I'd least like to lose Sarah, and Sarah was defined as contributing in stage 4, that doesn't mean that Sarah had stopped doing her individual bench work. So let's say Sarah was a bench chemist. She hadn't stopped applying knowledge, but she brought a different mindset to her work. And so when she was working at her bench, applying her knowledge, getting her work done on schedule, etc., she was constantly thinking, who do I need to keep in the loop? Who do I need to bring in? Who do I need to talk to make sure that this has the best possible impact on the team? So I know sometimes the way I describe this and share the research results, it makes people feel, well, if everyone's sharing knowledge, who's going to be doing the real work of the organization? And the reality is people who are in stage 4 are still doing that technical work. They just bring a different mindset to the process. If you think about it, although stage 3, 4, and 5 are the individual contributors that the manager said they'd least want to lose, that does not mean that stage 2 work isn't important. In fact, in some respects, in the short term, stage 2 is the most important work. You could have a company without anyone leveraging knowledge, and the company had probably survived for a couple of years. But if you went for 2 days without people applying knowledge, you wouldn't have any product to ship. And so, you know, when I share these results with you, I don't want to suggest in any way that stage 2 isn't important to managers. But what happens is the people who are willing to integrate their work and develop a mindset that takes them beyond just applying their knowledge, those people end up being more highly valued. You know, when Art Fry was coming up with his idea for Post-it notes and on the side trying to sell the idea and giving the free samples out to the executive secretaries, he wasn't saying to his manager, look, I'm tired of my stage 2 job. I'm not going to do my bench chemistry anymore. I'm just going to leverage knowledge. He was finding a way to leverage his knowledge while at the same time continuing to do that which was required of him in his job description and his manager's day-to-day expectations. Okay. There's another poll question. I'll leave the slide up. Let's put the poll question up. Who do you think managers said they would have the greatest difficulty replacing? Again, 3, 4s, and 5s. And there is a sequence to the way people develop. When you first join an organization, you're going to be spending a lot of time in acquiring knowledge. It takes time to get to a person to the point where they can create knowledge or share knowledge effectively or leverage knowledge. It requires a lot of credibility for the organization to give you the leeway to create knowledge. It takes credibility for people to be influenced by you if you're trying to operate in stage 4, stage 5, and that always takes time to build. So it's understandable why the manager said those would be the hardest to replace. Okay, another poll question. Okay, my next question is, do managers put their money where their mouths are? I'm often asked this in workshops. And so as part of our research, we analyzed the data and we controlled for factors such as age, tenure, organization level, education, etc. And we found that each advance in terms of the stages from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, etc., was accompanied by a certain increase in pay. And okay, I've only had 2 people respond so far with the results. One said 5%, one said 0%. I'm just, and maybe it's been closed to votes at this point. What we found was each transition in terms of the stages from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, etc., was accompanied by a 10% increase in pay at each of those transitions. Okay, so with that, we're going to be advancing very quickly now. Okay. The basic study conclusions are that an individual needs to move beyond stage 2 if they're going to be consistently viewed as a high performer throughout their careers. Stage 3, 4, and 5 consistently deliver competitive advantage for the individual and also for the organization. Again, that doesn't mean you stop doing the technical engineering work. You just do it in a fundamentally different way. Okay, so questions are so... Oh, we don't believe in our managers, do we? Another great comment. The data that I get from engineers suggests that they don't believe in their managers that much, but the data I got from my research suggests that there's some method to the thinking of the managers and what they evaluate. I think where managers fall down is they're not good at articulating the stage 3, 4, and 5 expectations. And that's the beauty of the stages model. It articulates some needs that organizations have that managers haven't been good at articulating. One of the ways in which managers articulate the needs of the organization is they create these job descriptions. And as I look at most job descriptions in organizations, technical job descriptions for technical people, those are really focused on stage 2. I'd say 80% of those job descriptions are focused on stage 2. And so there are some people in organizations, technical people, who figure out the need to deliver stage 3, 4, and 5 contributions pretty much on their own. And then there are other engineers who could have an IQ of 130 or more, who really don't put those pieces together because the organization hasn't articulated them. And that's what I hope the stages model does for engineers, particularly those that haven't figured out all the rules of the game. Here's some of the expectations that organizations have that they haven't articulated very well. I'm going to skip this slide. I tell a story, but I'm out of time, about an individual that was a secretary who started at a chemicals company, who moved through the stages in a secretarial job, then got moved to IT because she was so good with computers, and the boss realized that she wouldn't be happy being a secretary for the rest of her life. So she got to the point of being a stage 4 in a secretarial job. At the help desk, she goes back to being stage 1 because she's mastering the ropes of a new job. And then she actually, at the help desk, moves through to stage 5. And I'm going to just describe the end of the story. It's like a 15-minute story, and I'm going to give you the 3-minute version. So she's at the help desk. She analyzes all the call logs, and she recognizes different needs for different parts of the organization. And she goes to her bosses and says, you know, as I've analyzed the call logs that we have in the help desk area, the marketing people seem to have these kind of problems. The manufacturing people have those problems. The new hires, they have these other problems. Here's what we need to do. We need to put on these targeted sessions. And here's what I recommend we give to marketing. Here's what I recommend we give to manufacturing. And here's what we need to put into the new hire orientation program. Managers bought the idea and they implemented it. That's essentially stage 5. Now, when I interviewed Kathy as part of my research, the secretary, she was the director of IT at Engelhard Corporation, which was a chemicals company back east that's since been bought by some other company. But she had gone from secretary to director of IT. Her next step up was vice president of IT. She didn't have a degree in programming, a degree in computer science, but she really understood computers, and she understood the impact that technology could have on the organization. Anyway, some of the points that I like to bring out in this particular story is that she grew through the stages independent of her job. She went from stage 1 to 5, all at the help desk. Growing through the stages makes one more valuable to the organization. Let me go back and say something about that. She was more valuable to the organization because of her stage 4 and 5 contributions at the help desk. And the question that I will usually ask is, why was Kathy doing this and she didn't get a different job description? She didn't have a special office or a special title, or she wasn't getting paid any more than anyone else. No one was asking her to do stage 5. You know, what was motivating her? And I'm going to answer the question. She wanted to make a difference. She wanted to feel that she was having an impact. And until she moved into stage 4 and 5 at the help desk, she felt like she was just putting out fires all the time. She didn't feel like she was really having an enduring impact. And so job satisfaction was what drove her. But had the organization not valued her and recognized her and rewarded her accordingly, she obviously would have left. They were smart enough to, over time, promote her. And as I say, when I interviewed her, she was the director of IT. Something else that I learned from people like Kathy that I interviewed is that 98% of people in the workplace, engineers, everyone, really want to feel that their work makes a difference, that what they do matters, and that brings career satisfaction. And one of the things we've noted in our research is the more people move into stage 3, 4, and 5, the more they feel that they're having an impact. And then finally, growing from one stage to the next does not necessarily mean more work. It represents a more effective way to use one's time and make a difference. So for example, at the help desk, they were feeling really swamped with the volume of phone calls. When Kathy moved to stage 4, she started coaching her clients, which made them more independent of her. They didn't need to call her with as much. Most of the other people at the help desk just fixed people's problems and sent them on their way, but that just created a dependence. By moving to stage 4, Kathy reduced the dependence and got her customers being a little more self-sufficient. And then when she identified a systemic change, she again reduced the pressure on the help desk. Okay, I have a question here. They don't call us secretaries any longer. That's right. So let me end that story. They're now admin assistants, mostly, or executive assistants. Kathy started her career in the early 1980s. She came out of Secretarial College when they were called secretaries. She started on a typewriter, and it was only after a couple of years at Engelhart that she got her first PC. And so forgive me for using the archaic expression or term for it. So you're right, executive assistants now. And Kathy was deserving of that title long before it became the more common term, and secretaries or that title disappeared. Let me finish with that last topic. I had 4 principles for getting what you want. And I want to talk about the comfort zone and what I call the engagement cycle. When someone starts a new job, they usually start in the lower left quadrant. Never take a job unless it's a good fit for your basic talents and passions. But you also start in the low ability, because you should never take a new job that you already know how to do. There's no growth potential in that. And we've always got to be looking out for our growth. That's what makes us sustainable in our careers. And so we start in the lower left quadrant. If it's a good fit, we're going to move into the second quadrant. But if we stay there too long, we start following the path that takes us all the way to quadrant D. When we can do a job with our eyes closed or virtually, then we do start to make that shift in the top left-hand quadrant, quadrant B, and we start losing motivation. Now, I'm not going to ask any more poll questions. In the interest of time, I'll just run through them and answer the questions myself. What are the factors that cause people to end up in quadrant C? Basically, it's the fear of failure. Think of it this way. Quadrant B is your quadrant of high performance. You're admired, you're respected, but it's also the comfort zone. That being in a place where you're highly valued, you're highly esteemed, et cetera, can be a very seductive trap. And so what do? What we've got to do is engage our manager in conversations about new challenges that will keep us growing and learning. And so the question I ask is, when's the best time to engage your manager in that conversation? When's the best time to start thinking about it yourself and start strategizing and lining up the ducks so that you can move your career in the direction you want? And it doesn't necessarily mean the next job. It's the next project that will keep you stretching and so on. Now, many people will answer, 5, 5.5, 6, 7. And in reality, most people don't do it till they get to 5.5 or 6 or 7. But that's not the optimal time. The optimal time is somewhere between 4 and 5. Here's why. You have a strong reputation, you have high motivation and confidence, and your leverage in any conversations with your manager is going to be so much stronger. The moment you start moving into quadrant C, some of that shine is lost. And so your leverage in negotiations is weaker. And so you want to start this thinking and this negotiating before you get anywhere close to quadrant C. So my question to you is, where are you currently in the engagement cycle? We know where ideally we should be, either A or B. Hopefully not in C or D, but I know realistically that many people do end up in C. And the people end up in D not because they've lost ability, but because they're no longer energized by their work. They no longer keep up with the top people in their field. They start falling back in terms of they're not gaining as much new knowledge, etc. So relative ability drops, not absolute ability. Now, how do you stay out of quadrants C and D? One option is think of this in terms of the stages. In that quadrant A, you're acquiring. In every new job, the first thing you're going to be doing is acquiring. No matter how much education or experience you have, you've got to learn the ropes of the new organization, the expectations of your bosses, etc. One way to stay out of quadrant C is you find a new job. And so you keep going. Now, the danger of doing this all the time is people see you as someone who doesn't stick around very long, and so they don't want to invest in you. If you have a long track record of that, they may not want to hire you. And the final thing is, if you're always changing jobs that only give you enough time to get from acquiring to applying, in other words, mastering the techniques and tools of that job, you never learn how to move into creating, sharing, and leveraging. And after mid-career, that becomes a danger. And so my preferred method, although you've still got to change jobs, that's going to be a necessary strategy. So that you don't over-rely on that strategy, we can integrate the stages into this. So if you think of that as acquiring and applying, and maybe you outgrow the job if you only think of it as acquiring and applying in 2 or 3 years. But if you think of the job in terms of creating, sharing, and leveraging, there may be opportunities for growth in that current job that make you much more valuable to the organization. And the more value you add for your manager, the more leverage you have in conversations with your manager. Okay. So a question that I want you just to answer for yourself. We've talked about needing to meet the organization's unarticulated needs, and I've provided the stages model as a way of thinking about some of the unarticulated needs of the organization. I want to encourage you to think about this question. What's your most important opportunity to expand your contribution to the success of your current organization? And once you've decided that, you make some notes, put together some thoughts, and then try to engage your manager in a conversation. Or you don't have to engage your manager. You can do it independent of your manager, possibly. But long term, it's going to be more successful the more you engage your manager in the process and in the conversation. And a quick summary. So manage your career like a business. Don't expect managers to tell you everything that's in their head. I'm sympathetic towards managers. A lot of them today are expected to do technical work as well as be supervisors and managers. They're very stretched. And so they're not always going to articulate their needs as well as they should. And we need to help them by seeing them as our customer and helping them get clear by defining some of those needs and then being able to go to them. Hey, I've got this idea. I think it'll add value to the team in this and that way. I'd like to do it. Decide what's most important to you, what you're willing to trade for it. Moving into stage 4, there's something that you sacrifice. When you're in stage 4, you're sharing all your trade secrets that make you the best stage 2 in the group. And the fear, I move into stage 4 and other people will know how I do it so well and I'll lose my distinctiveness. You do lose perhaps some of your technical distinctiveness when you move into stage 4 and you're going to have to live with that. But what you get is a different kind of distinctiveness that has managers see you as someone who is not only looking out for their own performance, but is really enhancing the productive capacity of the team and easing the burden on the manager. Again, you have more leverage in your conversations with your manager if you're seen by him or her as someone who's taking some of the burden for making the team successful off their shoulders and helping them with that responsibility. And the last, and so I've talked about thinking of the organization and your boss as a customer, and finally, avoid the trap of the comfort zone. In my workshops, when I teach this and I gather the data, I get 30 to 50% of the people saying they're in quadrant C and D, which means it's long overdue for some serious career thinking and conversations to get your career back on track. Okay, someone's saying thank you very much. Will the PowerPoint be available somewhere? Helen, thank you so much. If you could answer those questions. And
Yes.
thanks everyone for your attendance.
Yes, the recording and slides will be posted to the IEEE USA website within a few days. It'll be in the same section where you went to register, IEEEUSA.org/careers/webinars. Thank you,
Can we
Nigel.
connect? Okay, someone said, can we connect with you through LinkedIn? I am on LinkedIn. Or my email address is nigel@targetedlearning.com. Thank you, everyone. I've enjoyed being with you this afternoon. I wish you great success in your careers.
Okay, we will end the webinar now. Thanks
Thank you.
again.
Bye.